Well, I have officially made a mess inside of the Firebird. It was clean, the port 15 was done, and now, well, you can look at some of the tools I'm using here and take a guess at what's going on. My name is Nick, you're watching Olsen Auto, and today we are going to attempt to wire in a bunch of stuff into this car. So, let me show you what I've already done, and then show you what we're doing. So as you guys know, a little while back, maybe you don't know, I have no idea what I've showed and what I haven't. Ran a positive wire all the way up into this distribution bar from the back where the battery's gonna sit. Got a ground strap, grounding it to the frame, the body right here. Gotta ground the frame to the body and then the engine to the body, or engine to the frame, so that it's all grounded together. Here, I have a bunch of extra connections. So you can see I got a bunch right there, all positives and negatives. I'm going to undo my plug under here that I made, so give me 1 second. So if you didn't know, I am running the digital Intellitronics gauge cluster in my Firebird. And of course, I loomed it and I threw this 4-prong plug on. So 2 of these are positive and negative, and then the other 2, one goes to fuel, one goes to a purple dimmer. So I have the dimmer rigged up, still have to wire into the car, but it's wired into the other gauge cluster already. Positive and negative are going to that distribution bar, and the fuel had to drop the tank here. Gonna have to extend the ground wire a little bit, and I made a connector for the positive for the sending unit, and of course a whole bunch of wire that's gonna get run up through the trunk, into the body, and into the other side of this plug, so that this gauge cluster is always removable. One of the big things with this car was making it serviceable. So like, yes, I could have just hardwired everything in, but then if I ever had to take it back out, it would have been a nightmare. So I want to make sure this whole thing's serviceable. We got the big plug over there for the big gauge cluster back there, and I'm currently wiring in the oil pressure sending unit sitting right in the back. It's a 2-wire, so one of them is going to go into the gauge cluster through the firewall, and the other one's going to get ground to the engine. Of course, got the brake lines all done and connected. Need some brackets and whatnot, but that's going well, so that should be pretty much set. And fuel lines are in the works. The metal line is getting straightened and bent. Currently just doing some wiring, trying to get everything hooked up, because it's hard to have an engine that runs when you can't see any of the diagnostics. So currently I'm about to wire oil pressure. I'm gonna have to do something for the coolant, because I don't think I can tap into the new Holley sensor. I'm gonna also have to grab some of the wires out of this, because one of those is high beam and, you know, turn signals and whatnot, and that's going to go into that. So this is the wire that I cut, just throwing a terminal. Of course, I'm going to heat shrink it, and that'll go on the oil pressure sending unit. It'll go through the firewall and connect into the back of that connector. So let's make some connections. Alright, so oil pressure is connected. Now we just have to do a ground wire for the oil pressure. And then 9 more connections. So that's what we're looking at for the oil pressure. Not too bad. Again, I tried to keep the color as close as I could, because I only have so many colors here to work with, and I really don't want to use Harbor Freight wire because it sucks. This wire right here is just Dorman wire. It's really good quality wire. I like it. So it's flexible, but it holds its shape enough to work with. Doesn't feel like it's made of brittle plastic, so that's good. Yeah, now I gotta ground it on the other side of the block. Alrighty, so I found a bolt that fits in the intake. I cut it up to make it a little bit shorter, just so, you know, I don't have to sit there and thread for a million miles. Even though it's not really structural, it doesn't need too many threads, and that's plenty to grab just for the ground strap here. So, make up a wire. Now I am using a gauge wire slightly bigger than what they recommend. They want 18 gauge, this is 12 gauge, pretty big difference there. I was gonna cut some 6 gauge off, but this connector wasn't gonna work with it. I don't think it'll pose a problem. If it does, we'll know pretty quick. So that end's done. Now I just have to add one of the small spades on this end to connect to the sending unit. All right, so that end's gonna go to the intake, which will be grounding to the engine. That end's gonna go to the oil pressure sending unit, and then the oil pressure's done. So for fun, I wanted to see what would be needed to make this key work as far as key on power so I can send that to the sniper and whatnot. This is a column out of a 1980 Firebird. This is a 79, and apparently the plugs, everything is entirely different on the column. I'm going to cut up the old Firebird, the 1980, grab the plugs and start ohm testing, because that sounds like fun. The Fox Buddy will get its day soon enough. I just want to make sure that the Firebird is running. If you guys don't know what this is, it's an 88 notchback, 5.05 speed, gutted, pretty much gutted, and caged. It'll be finished at some point. This has been the parts car for a while now, and it's about to be used some more. Gonna cut up all those connectors under the dash, give myself a nice little pigtail, and we're gonna start ohm testing. There are some purists out there crying right now. Let us go and see what we can do with these. Okay, so this is sketchy, if that's the word you want to use. So I cut the connectors off of the blue car and I plugged them in here. What I did is I'm feeding 12 volt positive and I'm testing different key positions. So trying to find out which wire gives me key on. And if I get my little diagnosing tool here, and yes, I put the vice grip on so I can get a better grip. So we know my ground is good. And then purple doesn't get key on power. Orange should be getting key on power. That's awkward. I broke it. What'd I do? So I got my ground a little bit better here. That was what was failing me. So it works. And then orange should be getting key on power, which it does. Not sure what this little gray wire does. We're ignoring it. This one gets key on, pink gets key on, and red is constant 12 volt. So this purple one here only turns on when cranking, so that's gonna be my starter relay wire. This pink one does not turn off when cranking. So not turning off when cranking means it has to power my CDI box and all of my engine running stuff, because if it's not running my engine running stuff and I run one of these wires that turns off when cranking, I'll never get spark. So yeah, essentially, this pink one is going to feed a distribution bar. That's going to run my coil, CDI box, and sniper. Also going to run my gauge cluster since it's LED now, so it shouldn't take too much power at all. So I got to run another one of those distribution bar things, except this is going to be the power wire for it. And then one of these, or I guess maybe even both of these, I guess it doesn't really matter. The power wire is going to get fed into constant 12 volt. Because that's whatever, and then you stick the key in. So of course we are running the TCI Easy TCU because we no longer have a Turbo 350, we have a 4L80E. And I figured, I tried to look for a bus bar, no one has it, so I'm gonna order one up in a minute or two here so that I can run bus bar, key on while cranking power. I'll have, that will plug into this, and then I'll have the pink wire feeding into another bus bar, which will have trans controller, gauge clusters, and my stuff under the hood, so that while I'm cranking I always have power, but I don't have always key on power because of course that would be bad. So it'll be key on while cranking power. But this is all for my trans controller. This is the big unit, and then you got the handheld over here so I can change settings, tune it, do whatever I want to do, put it in race mode, etc. So we got a bunch of plugs here, and I figured this would look better if I hid it under the dash. Because originally, well, it's still here, so you'll see it. I have the trans controller sitting right there behind the distributor. I can't hide those wires, but I can hide them under the dash. So I'm gonna unbolt that. I'm gonna bolt it somewhere in the car in here. Not sure where yet, probably right up in the footwell or somewhere accessible, even when there's carpet down. So maybe I'll bolt it up in here and make another bracket, somewhere like that. But all this is gonna be tucked in the dash. And then I'll just run the few plugs under the car and it should be much easier. I also didn't feel like trying to sneak this through the firewall. It's a big connector, and that's for the handheld. So going to start taking that one out on the outside and find a spot to mount it on the inside of the car. All right, this is Tuesday. It is Tuesday. Last clip I think was recorded on Sunday. Working on the Firebird. Now I don't know if I filmed it or not, but I took the center console out of the parts car just so I could rig up where I want to mount some of my stuff, so I'm not sure where to mount this, because you'll notice, well, first of all, you'll notice I have, I think 1,000 or 1,500 of these Velcro dots, so if you need some Velcro dots, hit me up. But we ended up getting this out, so all my trans stuff is right here. We got the sniper set up on the dash, so you can see the wire that goes in here. I need you guys to comment down below. Of course, my battery just died, but go ahead, comment down below what I should put in this square and this square. This was originally heater controls, which I no longer have. I gotta finish taking that stuff out from behind the dash. I was gonna run heat, but the coolant, the way it's set up in the engine, not really gonna work. And of course, all the cables and whatnot are frozen. I don't feel like fighting it. I'm pretty sure it's a bad heater core. Not worth my time. I'm not gonna drive this car in anything but nice conditions anyway, so not a big concern. As far as this one, I'm not sure. This one used to have, just to think through, I think it was the rear defrost. So what should I put in these two little squares? For now, I'm just thinking a piece of black plexi to match the gauge cluster so it looks the same. It'll never light up, and of course, the wire runs through here, so I need to be able to remove whatever is in here relatively easily, but I think that looks good. It looks super slick. Of course, it's Velcro, so if I need to, I can just pop it off and then pop it back on. Super simple, super cool there. In other news, I ordered some more distribution bars, so of course we have that one. Got the exact same one right here and another black one as well. This is going to be my key on while cranking power, and my black one is going to be a key on but not while cranking power, which is pretty much just going to be the radio and maybe like an interior light or something. So real quick, I'm going to find somewhere under the dash to mount this, somewhere that I like. I'm thinking in here, but like behind the dash. Got to make a little plate for it and start wiring it up. So that big red wire off the ignition is going to go to always 12 volt, and then the pink wire is going to feed this, which is going to have like 5 or 6 different wires coming off of it, feeding my key on for the gauge cluster. So the gauge cluster always stays on while cranking, the distributor, the CDI box, the sniper, and the trans controller. So when the engine's cranking, none of that turns off, because that would suck if your distributor turned off while cranking. Something tells me it wouldn't run too well. All right, with the power of self-tappers, we got it, I put it right into the heater box because this car doesn't have a prayer of ever having heat. And to be honest, like I said, I'm not gonna be running this car in any weather that really requires heat or any sort of ventilation. It's what we got the windows for. We got the nice floppy windows. That's what those are for. So yeah, we mounted it right to the box. It's a little bit crooked, which is very, very annoying. But I can't really re-drill the hole because it's too close to being straight that it would just drill another hole and then it really wouldn't work. So we're gonna call it good. All right, because I feel you guys should be updated, because that's kind of my job here. I moved my ground strap that goes up into there, down here behind this panel, and to the floor. I moved that to the top one because it looks a bit cleaner. I moved over some wires, so now we have wires on this bottom distribution bar. Of course, we have our main feed from the ignition. So this is what's gonna actually power this bar. Right now, it'll be getting no power, and then when I turn the key on, which it's already on, let's pretend it was off, this will then get power, which will turn on my small gauge cluster, which is this one right here. And because I have the mind of a child and I can't read legitimate wiring schematics, I am doing what works for me, and I am writing down literal step-by-step instructions for how this wiring is going together. So purple to red, obviously I don't have every color wire in the world. That would be like $1,000 worth of wire here. So I'm writing it down, every single step, where each one is going, how the colors change, and then I'm doing this cool little thing. So I'm calling them D-bars, distribution bar number 1. This is distribution bar number 1 positive, and then I'm breaking it down which one is which. So ignition battery plus, CDI box battery plus, sniper battery plus, and then of course the main feed on the bottom. Same with D-bar number 2, the ground, and I have that one written down as well. And now I'm working on number 3, which is the key on while crank. So far all I have is a small gauge cluster, and I just ran the wire for the, I believe that's the CDI box battery plus. I'll double check that in a second, but that'll be the CDI box, which is going to get fed into there. And then there's 2 more for under the hood, not including transmission stuff. And that one will be done for key on while crank. I was able to pick up some larger step bits. So this hole right here that I originally ran my wires through, of course, is supposed to be the throttle cable. So right next to it, I drilled a bigger hole. Camera's gonna go upside down here. Drilled a bigger hole there. That's about a 1-inch hole, give or take, at least give or take 1 inch. So I put a grommet in there from Harbor Freight, so there's no chafing concerns with the wires. And of course, I'm gonna loom all the wires too. So gonna pull them all out, or do them one at a time, feed them back through the firewall, and then feed them right through that new hole. Okay, so update, because I'm bad at this. I had to drill another hole for the wires because the grommets are a bit smaller than I thought they'd be. So I have one hole that's going to be for like the loose wires, like the ones that are all going to a super different spot that can't really be loomed. So that's what the top hole is for. It looks a lot messier here than it really is. I just have to clean up a few of the plugs and reroute them. But long story short, if I can get the camera in here, you can see those wires are loomed going through the bottom hole, and then right above it I have like my sniper plug for the handheld. I have like my blue wire for the fuel, and then of course we have my oil pressure, which I lost the screw for and still can't find. So that'll look pretty clean. And then of course all my wires are loomed and running through there. I did screw up the relay and the fuse thing right there, so that is looking chill. Okay, so you know how sometimes you do things like on a complete whim that don't make sense? Well, this is one of them. I painted the Firebird. So on Saturday, which is hopefully when I'll be finishing up this video, I am gonna paint the rest of it. I'm gonna paint the hood, the roof, the rear quarter, because bad spray paint looks better than completely destroyed original paint. Plus, these aren't the panels that are staying on the car. All these are getting replaced. The doors are getting replaced. This one might actually be good, but this fender's bad. Both fenders are bad. The hood's gonna get modified. I mean, the trunk might stay, but it's all gonna get body worked anyway. And I figured it'd cost me what, 30-40 bucks to paint the whole car, make it one color. And to be honest, I know on camera it looks better than it really is, but like, it's not bad.
Told my brothers one day we gon' make it. We just gotta grind for that paycheck. Mama told me one day I'll be famous. Remember when she used to say she hate this? Back then they would laugh when I say shit. Now I'm inside all them people's playlists. So one day I'll be stomping.